Welcome to Fiery Discourse, your podcast for media featuring dragonesses, female dinosaurs, and other similar saurians and scalies. I'm your host, Ludmillanon, and with me are my co-hosts, Angron, Mathmachine and The Shark. Today is our 185th episode, and we're discussing the 2018 My Little Pony Friendship is Magic episode, Sounds of Silence. So, let's get things started.
We're doing another My Little Pony episode? Yay.
Perfect. Go ahead, Angron.
My Little Pony. I used to wonder what friendship could be. My Little Pony.
The episode of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic we're discussing up today comes from Season 8, and although the later seasons had some really high quality episodes, I was actually kind of falling off of Friendship is Magic by this point. It just, I don't know, I feel like with the School of Friendship and that, it just kind of felt forced. In a way, a lot of the other changes didn't feel quite as forced in a way.
Yeah, kind of read here, and that's because, and yeah, I know the whole point of the show is, selling the ponies, selling the toys, but I think at this point, it was like really obvious that, this stuff literally only exists to sell the set of the school. Like, even later seasons will start introducing new buildings, new areas, for obvious reasons, so you could buy the sets, and yes, I know the whole point of My Little Pony is toys, but I think by this point, it got really in your face.
Definitely. And hey, at least you can't say it's as bad as Transformers the movie. They didn't horribly kill all the ponies so they could sell creature toys. So they have that going for them.
Yeah, unlike Nintendo, where it's like grandpa cringe, like we know it kind of sucks, but we can live with it. This feels like corporate cringe, aka Sony, where they're trying to be aware and hip with the kids, when in actuality, that hipness can only get carried so far. Before, like with Enchanted and Shrek the Third, everything becomes meta.
Yep. Thankfully, they didn't go that far with this one. The episode itself begins at the Castle of Friendship, where Twilight, Sparkle, Applejack, and Fluttershy enter the cutie map room. Twilight is excited that Applejack and Fluttershy are going on a friendship quest, as Applejack is confused, saying they did one before. Twilight notes that this is the first time that two ponies have done a friendship quest twice, which I have to say, they're really ripping off Die Hard 2 here. In the same yay, happened to the same girl twice.
Nice.
Fluttershy says that's good, as Applejack notes that's because we're so good at solving friendship problems while nudging her. Twilight notes that this one might be tricky as they're heading to the Peaks of Peril, frightening Fluttershy. Applejack tries telling her that it could just be a name, as Fluttershy responds by saying, like how Cloudsdale is made of clouds and the Crystal Empire is made of crystals, as Applejack concedes the point.
Yeah, first of all, Fluttershy has a point. Like, a rose by any other name is a good kind of metaphor, but it too can only get carried so far before reality decides to slap you in the face. Also, second, back to the whole two ponies doing two friendship quests back to back. A, it's true, and B, something that goes something two of them, something Doofenshmirtz, you get it.
It's not like just the places have a meaningful name because that's what they have. Applejack, you live in a world where everybody's apparently named after something they're going to be talented in the future. You bake apples, Pinkie Pie throws parties with pies, Lyra has a Lyra cutie mark, so yeah, this really is a world where we can really judge books by their cover.
Yeah, exactly. Applejack asks Twilight if she knows anything about it, as Twilight explains that Rockhoof told her that no pony knew about the Peaks of Peril back then. She then levitates a shield, showing two figures are on there in kind of a yin-yang pose. Twilight explains that the Kirin used to live there, known for their kindness and truth-speaking, as Applejack is relieved that everything will be easy. And this actually ties into why we are discussing this episode, because Kirin actually come from Chinese mythology, and they basically are just dragon horses. It really is interesting because I think for a lot of people, myself included, this is the first time that I ever really heard of Kirin as a concept, and it really is neat that My Little Pony would dig deep into mythology like that.
Oh, trust me, you get too deep into the Asian and Polynesian lore, and you are going to find some crazy shit on that regard. There's seriously a deer dragon. I don't want to say Korean lore, but yeah, it's definitely there. So something like the Kirin is honestly tame by comparison.
Oh, easily. Twilight's continues her saying that there are other evil creatures that live there called the nirik, and Fluttershy sees this and screams out, "Nirik is goblin spelled backwards!" Hey, wait, no, that's not right.
Like this obvious blatant back and forth sort of deal with words kind of reminds me of Phoenix Wright's whole naming thing with the characters being named certain pun-like things. And second of all, hello, Giraffe Rig line. We haven't really talked about you at all.
Considering what Fluttershy figured out, I can't wait for the scene where they start eating Applejack and she's like, oh, they're eating her. And then they're going to eat me. Oh my god.
My God.
Fluttershy nervously says for Twilight to go instead of her, as Twilight says, sorry, Fluttershy, but flanks don't lie, as we get to see a nice close-up of Fluttershy's cutie mark glowing. And yeah, this is nice and all, but the later season of Friendship is Magic really would have been way better if Gazelle showed up, because she absolutely would not take any of the villain shit, although her and Sakura might have a little bit of a difference. Fluttershy nervously laughs as Applejack says that no matter what, the two of them will solve the problem. After the theme song, which is actually kind of reanimated to show all the differences in the show from then to now, showing the School of Friendship, a lot of the changes in the plot lines and that, which it has Rarity working with Sassy Saddles and the like, and I like it. Don't get me wrong, I like it. I just feel it's a little bit too busy. Like, they're trying to cram way too much in the intro. And it's also probably because the original intro, seasons 1 to 6, is when they really started tweaking with it. It's such a simple, well-made opening that trying to bloat it all really feels like a lot. It'd be like if modern-day SpongeBob added Nosferatu and Bubble Bass and Lady Upturn and Slappy and all those characters shoved in the opening. It wouldn't really work, and I feel it's kind of the same thing here.
Yeah, I do agree that it can feel a little cramped. Oftentimes it doesn't allow for any breathing room, but I mean, the show has had a lot of stuff happen to it in the past several years. We can give it a little leeway, but we can also call it out when it's tightening the girdle too tight.
Well, as I pointed out before, and in the words of Mario vs. Donkey Kong, boy them all, boy them all, boy them all, boy them all.
If only we got to see Mario with the mini pony toys, that would have been a crossover for the ages. After the theme song, we then cut to the Friendship Express arriving at the peaks, only to instantly leave. Applejack notes that there is no one else there, as Fluttershy nervously says that maybe it's because they know something we don't. As Applejack tries telling her to get a grip, a shadowy figure appears, scaring the two. It turns out to be an older stallion who works at the railroad, as, in a funny gag, Fluttershy still screams when he comes out of the shadows and reveals what he looks like, so I guess Fluttershy is not a fan of the old people. The stallion notes that he's not used to ponies going to the end of the line, the final destination, before rattling off other synonyms, and at least this isn't Final Destination.
Yeah, and at least it's not exactly Final Countdown. No, wait, what am I saying? That would be awesome! At least it's got a killer soundtrack to go with climbing up the peaks of peril.
Yeah, you're correct, Lud. It wasn't the Final Destination. They can actually bring items and Fox doesn't have to be there.
Applejack then cuts off the old stallion, saying to get the point, as the pony says how there isn't anything out there except uncharted territory and wild beasts, before beginning to laugh insanely. And probably one of the funniest jokes of the episode, he still backs into the ticket booth and closes the shades while laughing insanely. Like, he's doing his job, but he's doing it in such a crazy way that it actually got a good chuckle out of me. Applejack says maybe there is a little something to be scared of, as we cut to Applejack making her way through the wilderness, dodging both bugs and mud. She eventually arrives at the peak and asks a question to Fluttershy, only for Fluttershy to not be there. Applejack has to go back the way she came, with the exact same things, just falling in mud and being attacked by bugs happening to her again. When Applejack gets back, she sees Fluttershy tending to some squirrels to keep their tree warm. Applejack yells at her, saying how they have no time for such nonsense, as Fluttershy keeps trying to tell her something. Eventually, Fluttershy rolls her eyes and just screams at the top of her lungs at Applejack, and a really funny moment. It's something that is just so well written and timed, and Andrea Libman's performance is really something to behold here, and yeah, it is really a good sequence. Oop, go ahead.
Yeah, I gotta agree. Andrea Libman was perfectly chosen to play both a very hyper and outgoing character and a very meek, introverted character like Pinkie Pie and Fluttershy, respectively. Also, for your previous thing about Applejack, to quote Ultra Magnus, I don't have time for that right now.
This little interaction shows subtle character growth that they have been doing throughout the series, which is something I've always appreciated. Initially, Fluttershy just could not raise her voice no matter what. She was always timid and meek, alluding back to the yay I did as a joke earlier on. But as the series went on, she did develop an actual voice and ability to speak for herself. And we see that here, and this is just a thing with her at this point in the series, rather than it having to be something that she learns. That's really nice to see that over 8 seasons, they are keeping these growths for these characters.
Yeah, it really shows just how serious they took the writing for Friendship is Magic. They actually kept it really internally consistent, which I have to give credit for.
Just a little note here. Do notice that Fluttershy raising her voice and getting a bit angry is actually helpful in this case, and just keep that in mind.
Fluttershy then tells Applejack that the squirrels told her of a shortcut to the Kirin village, as we cut to her moving a rock to unveil a path towards the village. Applejack notes how she got too caught up in the adventure, as Fluttershy says that without Applejack, she would have just talked to the squirrels all day long. They arrive in an open field as Fluttershy sees a butterfly, only for figures to appear. These figures turn out to be the Kirin, as they simply stand there, staring at the ponies. The Kirin design is a really interesting one because they all look like ponies, but with dragon horns in the middle of their heads, a mane of fur around their necks, a poofy tail, and scales around their noses and backs. I would say they actually did a really interesting job in it, and what's also interesting is there actually is kind of an animation mistake. They forgot to give the stallion design to the Kirin. If you notice, they all have the female form shape. So does that mean that the Kirin is an all-female race? Probably not, but it's fun to fantasize about.
I would say the Kirin gender pool ranges from pure on female to partial trans masculine. So, the sky's the limit in that regard.
Boy, we are really living up to the stereotype of noticing that a tribe of dragon-like creatures might possibly be all female.
But they really did forget to make male Kirin head models, so don't blame us, blame the animators. We're just pointing it out, people. Applejack then introduces herself in Fluttershy, only for the Kirin, led by a much taller female, to just stand there and not say anything. The Kirin just continue to stare at them as Applejack keeps trying to get them to speak, but nothing happens, and I know the reason why. The Kirin obviously talk in rock-bottom dialect.
She's just standing there, menacingly! Patrick, that's everyone. Oh, I thought it was just a selective thing.
Applejack eventually asks the female if they understand Ponish, and the Kirin nod yes, but still remain silent. Fluttershy asks if they don't speak, as the Kirin female shakes her head no. Applejack yells, don't or won't, only for Fluttershy to push her away. Fluttershy says they have to use yes or no questions, as Applejack asks, like Angel Bunny? And obviously it's not like Angel Bunny because, unlike Angel, these Kirin aren't completely heartless and soulless monsters.
Nor are they reliable in a Kelpie invasion or takeover. So, yeah, there's also that.
Fluttershy says that she always knows what Angel is feeling, but these creatures seem to have no emotions. Applejack asks how they'll solve a friendship problem if no one will tell them what it is. We then cut to the Kirin village, which really has such a nice design, how they use the trees and the natural foliage. Applejack notes how they're quieter than an apple blossom on snowfall, then goes up to one Kirin growing plants and tells him what a beautiful day it is. She then tries telling another one a knock-knock joke, but the Kirin still remains silent. Applejack then stands on a stump and sneezes loudly, only for Fluttershy to ruin her plan by saying Gesundheit before any of the other Kirin can. Applejack gets fed up eventually, yelling if any of the Kirin speak, as she then is pointed to a dark path in the woods by the Kirin. Fluttershy is afraid of the path, as Applejack just tells her to stay and find out anything about the Kirin, and she'll try to find one who talks. Applejack begins walking through the woods before bumping into another Kirin, this one with a cream color scheme and an orange mane. Applejack asks if the Kirin talks, as the Kirin just stares at her. Having enough of this, Applejack just snaps at the Kirin, yelling at her. However, the Kirin then begins to laugh and says, "Got ya," to Applejack, and this particular kirin is female. Like, actually confirmed female, not just us surmising. The kirin begins rambling about how it's hilarity before asking if she's pronouncing that right, noting how she hasn't talked in a while. The kirin calls herself Autumn Blaze and begins rambling on, saying how perhaps you're tired or hungry or reflective and want to eat or sleep or journal, then talks about how good it is just to talk again. Autumn Blaze is voiced by Rachel Bloom, who we previously talked about in the podcast not too long ago because she voiced Dot the Dragon on Muppet Babies.
First she was a Muppet Dragon, and then she was a horse dragon from Muppet the Haunts. Quite the paradox.
Autumn Blaze is basically a kirin version of Pinkie Pie, who keeps interrupting her sentences to go on tangents, then tells Applejack to follow her as Applejack says, "That was something all right." We cut to the pair of them going up a mountain to see a rainbow, as Autumn Blaze rambles about how the light shimmers off everything, and because of that, everything looks back at you and thinks the same thing, that they're all part of something big. Applejack takes a minute to process this before saying, "I was just going to say it's pretty, but you're right too." Autumn Blaze continues to ramble as she mentions how she hasn't been able to share all of her favorite things in forever, since the others took a vow of silence, and it's a lot for her to process. I do like that little touch how Autumn Blaze screws up words because it's been so long since she's actually talked to somebody else. Applejack asks about the vow of silence as Autumn Blaze notes that's why she left. Applejack asks Autumn Blaze if she could tell her about it, as Autumn Blaze looks sad. Applejack thinks that she doesn't want to talk about it, as Autumn Blaze agrees. She doesn't want to talk about it, she wants to sing about it instead, leading to the musical number of the episode, which, honestly for me, probably is one of the best musical numbers of these later seasons. It is so well done.
Yeah, like one moment she's like, "I can't tell you." Then she's like, "I'd rather sing." Good times, good times. Yeah, the start of this song absolutely works, and the rest of this song, many hits, few misses, but you'll see what we mean in a moment.
This is one of the best songs from the later seasons because, like the characters and locations and all of that, songs became more and more common as the series went on. Again, I know season 1, it was a musical series, but normally you will have one song every 5 or 4 episodes. Later seasons will almost have 1 and even 2 songs per episode at certain points. And the problem was that you can tell some of these songs were rushed, like, oh, we have to include a song, so just add whatever you can think at the moment. This one actually feels like one of the early season songs because it is so catchy, it is so good, it actually moves the plot along.
What I really like, and it's very noticeable from this point forward, is that this is a very wild, chaotic, crazy character that would not have been out of place as an original Lauren Faust design. She fits with early MLP stuff so perfectly. This is one of those rare characters that got added post Faust is released that actually feels like she belongs in this universe proper. And from the song on, she just goes full ham. And this is what you would want from a character like this.
Exactly. I really feel if she came out at around season 2, season 3, she would have been a fan favorite. Like, there would have been so much fan art and fanfic and shipping of her that it would have really been something. But we still got a lot of it, but not as much as we would have a couple of years earlier, The song begins with Autumn skipping through butterflies as she sings how the kirin used to talk and sing and tell funny jokes, and her stand-up was a riot. She continues to sing that one day, 2 kirin got in a fight over buying something and turned into nirik, with all the other kirin turning into nirik as well. Autumn Blaze sings about how flaming spread from head to head, it even burnt our bread, before rambling about how much she loves to rhyme.
Yeah, that is arguably the weakest line of the song, but I can't fault it too much because, yeah, it's just her being her and doing some pretty quirky stuff for it. So, kirin, nirik, Giraffarig, and Farigarath doth sue.
What I like about this explanation for that the kirin are the nirik is that this is very much in line with Eastern philosophy and mythology, that nothing is good or evil, it just is, and then it becomes good or evil depending on what force is in control at the moment.
Interesting. I didn't think of it like that, but it really does work out in that way. The village was burnt to a crisp as the leader tells them no more talking, and took them to the stream of silence, extinguishing both their capacity to talk and all of their emotions. Or another way you could put it is they got in one little fight and their leader got scared and said, "You go into the spring of silence right over there." Although the peace was restored, Autumn Blaze got bored extremely quickly as Sudoku could only keep you entertained for so long. We then get the chorus where Autumn Blaze sings about how you have to take the good with the bad, which is a lesson the Kirin never learned. We then see Autumn pacing back and forth as the days go on as she says how she tripped over her salvation in a flower bed.
I especially love the line she does here. Rainbows won't light up the sky until you let it rain. Tiny apples often filled with worms. That's a very good moral, especially for a race as enlightened and as truth-speaking as the Kirin.
Exactly. And Rachel Bloom really is a good musician, and it's kind of a shame we didn't really get to see her sing as much in the Muppet Babies episode, but thankfully they more than rectified that here, which is a good thing. Using the flowers she tripped in to make tea, she actually managed to revert the silence spell and subsequently drove the village baddie with her talking. She says that she tried absolutely everything, including jokes, songs, newspapers, speeches, which, in a fun little adult reference, when she says speeches, it's the scene from Citizen Kane when Kane is making his speech with a giant poster of himself. That's a pretty good gag. She then rambles about the story about the Kirin she wrote who lived below an opera stage and continues to babble on about this, which is pretty much just one big excuse to do a Phantom of the Opera reference, which is cool and all, but I would have liked them to reference the Lon Chaney Phantom. That's the guy who's really the romantic symbol. I mean, just look at that guy.
Yeah, or the Ewan McGregor one. Like, I know it's probably not everyone's cup of tea or whatever, but hey, we got more Ewan McGregor references.
Autumn Blaze then sings about how the leader gave her a choice. She could either live with the Kirin and keep her silence, or leave and keep her voice. She says how she left with everything she could carry, except the couch, because they're hard to move, as she's trying to push it out her front door, but she can't. She then lived in the mountains alone until Applejack showed up.
Well, at least she got that choice with her leader. Celestia would have banished her to Everfree Forester and then locked her in a dungeon in the place she banished her to.
Autumn Blaze then says, "Take it away, boys," as she points to a bunch of inanimate objects with faces doodled on them. And these guys are really talented at all. You can't blame them, but what really would have made this a standout if we got a crossover with Penny, Chip, and Used Napkin. Now, those trio, they know how to party. The song ends with Autumn Blaze singing the chorus again, noting how sometimes you have to let it rain in order to let good things happen.
Back to the trio, if you want to make it a quartet, throw in Wilson into the deal. Then you'll get quite the musical accompaniment.
That is true. That is true. He also would have been a legend. Applejack is shocked at this story, saying how no pony should give up their feelings just for being sad, as Autumn Blaze says she realized it when she started talking as well. Applejack realizes this is what the friendship problem is, and she has to tell Fluttershy. Autumn Blaze thinks that Fluttershy is what Applejack named her shadow, and says that hers is named Silhouette Gloom of the Sundown Lands, which is a pretty awesome name, and I want a spaghetti western starring that guy right now. Applejack says that they can convince the other Kirin to take her cure, as Autumn Blaze notes how she used all the flowers to cure herself, and they haven't grown since. Applejack says this wouldn't be much of a friendship quest if it was easy, then says how she'll go to the village to welcome her back. In a really cute touch, Autumn then begins talking to a little imaginary friend of her, made of her hoof and a leaf, saying how, between you and me, I'm not sure she's going to convince them, as she then shakes the hoof, but I hope she does. We then cut to Applejack arriving in the village, telling Fluttershy about the friendship problem, as Fluttershy says she found it too. After talking in unison for a second, Applejack says that they have to get the Kirin talking again, as Fluttershy says that they can't do that because the nirik cause fires, showing her a tapestry depicting that. In a really cute fourth wall gag, Applejack says, "That sounded a lot better when it was a song," as Fluttershy notes that the nirik can burn down the forest, and how last time they burnt down their whole village. Applejack says that's not a reason to stop talking, as Fluttershy says that the other animals in the forest could be hurt by the fire.
Remember, kids, if you want dangerous, albeit world-ending expedition explained, musical numbers.
Yep, it always works, at least in Equestria it does. Applejack and Fluttershy then begin to argue with each other, as the Kirin then begin to circle them. When Fluttershy notices that they're surrounded, the kirin levitate them as they begin taking the pair of ponies to the stream of silence, with HA and Fluttershy saying how they were just disagreeing with each other. However, just before they are dunked into the stream, a nirik comes to save them, using a wall of fire to do so. The nirik turns into Autumn Blaze, who says how she can't lose her best friend. Fluttershy is shocked to see Autumn Blaze talking, as Applejack leans over to her and says, "You have no idea." Fluttershy is also surprised to see Autumn Blaze control her fire, as Autumn Blaze says how she didn't either, and that anger is like other feelings in that it's not about having them, it's about what you do with them. Applejack notes how giving up happiness to keep away anger is no life. Fluttershy says how she didn't know without being able to talk to her animal friends. Autumn Blaze appeals to the other kirin, saying how much fun they had when they could speak. Applejack and Fluttershy note how everyone gets mad sometimes, as they then begin to argue about arguing, before laughing about it. Fluttershy then notes when they get really angry, the kirin can take some time away to be a nirik where no pony could get hurt.
Yeah, honestly, someone should just strap Bruce Banner down and just fly him over to the Peaks of Peril, because that guy might need to take some cues from Autumn Blaze.
Well, it would be Hulk versus Flutter Hulk then, and that would be something interesting. One of the kirin then tries using charades to tell them something, as Autumn Blaze doesn't get it, saying amongst many other guesses, Baby Fishmouth, which Baby Fishmouth is a reference to When Harry Met Sally, which pretty adult reference. I like when they do that. But Autumn Blaze then gets frustrated, and probably in one of the funniest jokes of the episode, she turns into a nirik, goes behind a rock to scream at the top of her lungs for a second before arriving, smiles, and asks what do they want.
If only the friendship map had sent Timmy's dad for the charades.
Yep, and thankfully it did not have Timmy there because he would have guessed Ghostbusters 2 again. Autumn Blaze realizes that the kirin want the cure for the stream of silence. Autumn Blaze mutters how, "I searched through the entire forest 73.5 times, although I wonder if that second half could make a difference," then runs off to the forest again. Applejack and Fluttershy end up wondering what the flower could be, as one of the squirrels from earlier runs up and chitters at them. Fluttershy says that the squirrel knows where the flower is, as it turns out to be the flowers that Fluttershy used to help insulate their tree. Applejack realizes that Autumn Blaze never would have thought to search that far away from the kirin village, and then realizes that if it wasn't for Fluttershy, they never would have found the flowers, as Fluttershy realizes that if Applejack never convinced the kirin to talk, they wouldn't need it.
Or that squirrel bringing the flower, that was a little favor that Squirrel Girl owed Fluttershy.
We then cut to them arriving to Autumn Blaze, bringing her the flowers as she asks how they did it, saying, "Feel free to add complicated descriptions and a lot of comedic tangents." I love that kind of fourth wall humor. It's so subtle, but it works. Applejack and Fluttershy, meanwhile, just stare at her, and a look that pretty much says, "Are you for real?" as Autumn Blaze realizes that there's something else she has to do. Autumn Blaze then puts the flowers in the stream as all the other kirin start to drink from it. They all begin to laugh and sing as the kirin leader then approaches Autumn Blaze, thanking her for bringing them all back to normal and saying how much they have all missed her beautiful voice. The episode ends with Autumn Blaze singing the chorus of the song again, making it rain from the stream on all of the other kirin, as in a weird kind of last second shot, it cuts to Applejack and Fluttershy doing a hoof bump, which, I don't know, that just one shot felt a little unnecessary. It's like, they had the perfect ending shot with the water spraying and all the kirin, a rainbow coming out, butterflies flying away, and then it just cuts to this. It felt like it was meant for earlier on in the episode, but they just slapped in the last 3 seconds. And I know, it's a very jarring jump in a way. Something I wouldn't normally point out, but it's really just so weird.
Yeah, I agree. This is definitely a weird one, especially for a series like this. Like, them just high-fiving and that's how we end things on? Yeah, it's a little bizarre. And this whole episode in general was a bit of an odd one. Like, it had a good flow and everything, but there was just something off about it that made it feel still good, but a little off in one way or another.
I have to kind of disagree there. I think this episode is one of the better ones from the last 2 seasons, and if more of them were like this episode, I feel like the final 2 seasons of Friendship is Magic would be looked at a lot fonder than it is now. Because, I mean, for every episode like this, and the one with Applejack's parents, you have an episode of Pinky with the Yakko phone, which, Yeah, that one is definitely the nadir of the series, at least in my eyes. Friendship is Magic would end up ending a year later, and it would also continue in comic form for a while before officially ending with a crossover with G1, which apparently was pretty interesting. I actually never got around to reading it, but I've heard it's pretty good. And with G6 around the corner, we'll have to see two things. Number one, if there's any Dragonesses in it. Number two, if it has any Applejack and Rarity in it, because if they don't have them in, that is the dumbest mistake Hasbro ever made. And number three, if G6 turns out to be marginally better than the song like a G6. I'll have to see about that.
Yeah, I definitely agree that there are a lot of dragons in the comics and quite a fair bit of Rarity and Applejack. There's a whole story arc that's pretty much just plain trains and automobiles, but it's Rarity and Applejack.
Yeah, I have to agree. I also always wanted to see one with Rarity and Pinkie Pie from that episode. That would have been a lot of fun. That is actually going to lead to the question of the week, which is, what are your favorite underrated fantasy creatures? Which we don't mean stuff like dragons or like unicorns, although that could count for the purposes of how they are depicted. But for my answer in particular, I'm actually going to have to go with the characters from this episode, the Kirin, because there's something that is really just so creative and so unique that this episode really made me interested in finding more stuff about them, only to find they are still relatively obscure all this time. You think with the whole Eastern meets Western culture that we have now, that Kirin would be used more in mythological works, but no, very little stuff. I mean, it's this and the third installment of a franchise, which we shall not discuss because of reasons. But yeah, Kirin are something that's just so creative. I would like to see them in more of like a mentor-helper role. Sort of like, I guess, centaurs in a way. I really think there's a way you can take these characters and really make them unique. I'm not just talking about it in the context of My Little Pony. I'm talking about it in the context of film or literature as a whole. Because, yeah, I really feel that they have such a great potential and no one seems to know how to use it to that. My second choice actually would be one that I just discussed a second ago, which would actually probably be centaurs. Because, yeah, I really do like them, but I just feel like, I don't know, they don't know how to use them. They're either depicted as like mindless warriors or that, but yeah, that would probably be my second choice, would be centaurs, just because I feel they too have so much more potential than what a lot of people give to them. Like, I would like to see more like Monster Musume type of characters, but those are going to be my two choices for my favorite underrated fantasy creatures. It's going to be the Kirin and centaurs. Let's see, Angron, what would your pick be?
If we're talking about favorites, then there's no better creature than the Minotaur. If we're talking underrated, that's going to be a little tricky because in some way, shape, or form, everyone knows about all the classics, all the basics when it comes to mythological creatures. The griffin, the hippogriff, the golem even. It's a clay statue with a scroll inside. There is not too much you can do with that for the most part. But what you can do with my choice for this question is do a JoJo reference. Ladies and gentlemen, may I present the Tulpa. The Tulpa are pretty much spirits formed by intense concentration and manifestation. And Tulpa in particular are, let's be real, pretty much just stands. They're pretty much Tibetan stands that you can manifest, maybe through fighting spirits, maybe through intense psychological repression. A lot of things you can ultimately do that. These things inspired stands. All those album cover rocks, they came from this, the Tulpa. And I'm not gonna lie, if you actually saw what a real Tulpa looked like, you wouldn't look at Star Platinum the same way again. But not gonna lie, that's kind of what makes them fascinating. They're powerful spirits that someone literally summons in order to like either exact vengeance or defend themselves. They psychokinetic manifestations, and that's pretty unique and honestly sorely underrated. This could make for some pretty serious horror or superhero themed deals. Hell, the closest example I can probably give is Absolute Martian Manhunter. That is how psychedelic it could possibly be. But yeah, for my pick, it's absolutely going to be the Tulpa.
Yeah, I can definitely see why, because again, it's a character with so much potential, or a type of being with so much potential, and yet no one seems to do anything with it. And I mean, literally, you can do anything with it, and yet no one does. It's so weird because that's the entire basis of the character. So let's see, Math, with your pick me.
I decided to go with griffins because while they are a very well-known creature and they have been in mythology all the way back to the ancient Greeks, and for the longest time were seen as creatures of nobility to the point of being on the coat of arms of royal families. In the last century or two, they've just become beast of burden. They have unfortunately just evolved in representation to creatures that you either ride as like flying stallions or just pack mule like animals, which is really weird to me that a mythological creature that was once so highly revered and intelligent has just become giant monster horse. But also, fun fact, another reason that griffins are my favorite mythological creature, that's my IRL name.
Ah,
Nice.
neat. That is such a really good choice because I feel like griffins, like you said, they're really just majestic, regal. I mean, like you said, they're literally based on a lion and an eagle, two of the most regal creatures on the earth. And yet, aside from Gilda and really the rest of the griffins in Friendship is Magic, I mean, nothing, like absolutely nothing. And like you said, it is a shame because I really feel like the only one that really got it, like, not even Onward did anything with that. And Onward did all kinds of weird fantasy creatures. So, let's see, Sharkwood, your pick me.
There's actually many creatures I really like, most of them because of the yokai, which, as everybody knows, is the Japanese monsters and all of that. There is one that I really like because of the concept, what it will eventually inspire, and that's the Omibosu. Anybody heard of that one?
Yes.
I have not.
Well, Omnibosu are basically a sea specter or spirit that their main like objective or like what their instincts tell them to is to find ships, sink them, and get the captain, take them to the underworld or take out. It varies depending of the legend and all of that, but usually the main goal is sink ships and get to the captain some way. And yeah, it's really interesting because the sea is all mysterious and all of that. So, of course, there's always this curiosity about it. And this whole, this whole concept of, and sometimes it isn't even a monster. It's like a giant humanoid. Like, they have the shape of a person. And it depends. But usually the funny thing is that what they have most interpretations in common is like they have like a bald head, let's just say. Or like a very round and plain head, which you'll see it. Anytime you see an Omibosu in a book or anyways, that's something you're eventually going to recognize. And yeah, there's a lot of mystery you can do. There's a lot of stories you can tell with this spirit. In fact, there is an interesting take they did with this legend. Because in a game, there's a boss that takes the name of Omibosu, and it's called Amebosu, at least in Japan. In English, this creature is known as the Water Grade. So yeah, anyone who's played Pikmin 2 and has gone to the submerged castle knows what happens if you stay in a salt level for too long. And yep, now you know why that creature has like a plain oval bald head, because it's clearly inspired by this creature. Keep in mind, Captain Olimar, his ships tend to crash, and then this creature hunts the Captain Olimar. It's a really interesting adaptation they did here. And I wish it was, I wish this spirit got more, this yokai got more to do in other media.
That is such a good choice there. I love when out of left field picks are like that because I never would have guessed that in a million years that the water rate was actually based on that. But wow, that is really something. Makes me wonder how many of the other Pikmin monsters are based on yokai. Now it is time for the patent pending Dragoness Scale, where this time we're going to rank Autumn Blaze, and this one was a really, really, really tough one. I mean, I had to really go back and forth with it because she has so many amazing, wonderful moments, and like just the character as a whole uplifts the episode so much to where, honestly, I have to say it, I'm giving her a perfect score. I cannot give her anything less than a 10 out of 10. The song is mind-blowing. As I mentioned earlier, probably one of the best of the later seasons of Friendship is Magic. The character is great. Just everything about her is amazing. The fact that we never really see her after this episode is a huge knock against Friendship is Magic. You know, could have easily had her show up in Ponyville or something like that. We could have had stuff, but nope, we didn't do that. We have to have Pinky play with the yak phone. Rachel Bloom did such a fantastic job with her voice. I mean, her as Dot the Dragon, she was a high mark for her voice on that character, but Autumn Blaze blows Dot out of the water. I'm sorry. She is just perfect in every way. Design is great, and as I said earlier, if she appeared in an earlier season, she would have been a fan favorite on the level of Discord and Queen Chrysalis, easily, without a doubt. So, yeah, I cannot think of anything she can be improved on. Let's see, Angron, what would you give her?
I hate to be that guy, but I'm gonna go just a little bit lower. Like, for what she is and what she ultimately represents in the show, I can absolutely dig that, and nothing against her design either. Like, doing Kirin in the My Little Pony universe, you can only do so much before you just ultimately throw up your hands and say, "Screw it, they're ponies too, except they're dragons." Yeah, absolutely. I do like the whole yin and yang thing with like the nirik pretty much being the angrier side of the Kirin. I also like they're built up to be truth speakers and oracles, but then too much truth speaking ultimately kind of leads to high tensions. And her song was nice too, so it's for that reason that I'm not going to give her too harsh a score, but I can't really find it in my heart to give her a 9 out of 10.
I feel like I can definitely understand where you're coming from with her because she's so good that you really just want like more of her in a way. Matt, what do you give her?
Autumn Blaze, as I said earlier, feels like more so than I think any other post Faust exit one-off character, like she is supposed to be a Faust character. She is wild, crazy, chaotic, insane. The song that she has is great. Her energetic and optimistic demeanor fits in so well with the spirit of the show. This is what I think MLP sort of missed after Faust left. They made so many of the side characters and one-off characters too normal and bland as an attempt to show how the main 6 were crazy, but you also needed crazy to bounce off of their crazy too. And this is a perfect example of why. She feels like she perfectly fits in and belongs. It's upsetting that she's just a one-off character because she could have been integrated into not the main cast, but the main supporting cast so easily. This is a 10 out of 10 character, and I am angry that this is all they gave her.
Yeah, as I said earlier, that they really could have had her show up in another episode, have her interact with Pinkie Pie. Just that alone, have them running around Equestria doing random stuff would have been amazing, and yet absolutely nothing. Let's see, Shark, what would you give her?
It's not gonna be a perfect train this time, but yep, I'm still going with a 10 as well. Again, check your marks. Mad and Shark share the same brain, but yeah, of the most modern characters, she definitely feels the most like a classic one. Like, it is a character you could have probably seen in the early seasons. She's so cheery. She actually like realized the moral before anyone else. Like, she figured like, hey, anger itself is not the problem. It's how you act under the influence. The fact that we see her in her nirik form actually save the day is like a really great thing as well. You know, she has a great voice. Yeah, I agree. The voice acting with her is amazing. The song is one of the best songs from the later seasons. So I can't really find her any flaws. So yep, it's gonna be a 10 out of 10 for me as well.
Nice, nice. And yeah, like I say, but not a perfect score, but I think we pretty much pointed out that My Little Pony Friendship Magic really needed way more of this compared to what it became later on, but thankfully it did not go to the low points that G5 did, which thankfully we do not have to talk about that show anymore. We will talk about earlier My Little Pony generations, which will be very interesting trying to compare how they took it so differently when they didn't have like a giant fan base breathing down their neck. They always had a fan base, but not like a fan base. That's going to be it for this week. If you have any questions, or if you want to see Autumn Blaze's theatrical shows, you can feel free to email us at fierydiscourse@outlook.com. Visit us at Twitter at twitter.com/fierydiscourse. Visit us at Blue Sky at Blue Sky Fiery Discourse. Be sure to subscribe to the Fiery Discourse YouTube channel and subscribe to the playlist. Like and hit the bell icon. Leave a comment. Any old comments are appreciated. Next week, we are going to be talking about not a movie, not a TV show, not a music video, and not a theme park ride. Next week, we're going to be talking about a trio of children's books, Nighttime for Bridget, Dinorella, and Edwina, the dinosaur who didn't know she was extinct, for our first ever children's book special. It's going to be a lot of fun. We found 3 really good children's books, all of which follow a female dragoness or dinosaur in this case, and they're going to be a lot of fun to talk about because we got some really good ones here. We got one from a former Disney animator. We got a really charming fractured fairy tale. And then we have Mo Williams, the guy who helped work on Kids Next Door when he became a children's book author. And all three of them are amazing, but only one of them would get the higher score. So definitely look out for that one.
Yep.
But that's going to be it for this week. And until then, thank you all so much for listening. And until then, take care.
Later, y'all.
Bye bye.
Peace out.
Adios. See you all next week.